I'm Jean Tiberio, and I'm a nutritionist and a wellness coach. Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. Today is episode 130, and I'm calling it, What's Monsanto Been Up To? Ladies and gentlemen, I learned something new today, and what I learned was this. The Trump Tower has a back door. And apparently, all types of unsavory characters are slithering in and out of this back door without the news people even knowing. Until now, anyway. What is also going on right now is that there's a massive merger going on between the chemical giant Bayer and the chemical giant Monsanto. Now, we all know Bayer to be the proud makers, along with IG Farben, of Cyclone B. Now, Cyclone B was used to kill millions of Jews during the Holocaust, but I imagine you know that. And oh yes, Bayer also makes aspirin. Now, Monsanto originally was a relatively small company, back in the 50s and 60s, making primarily saccharin. That was until they moved into chemical fertilizers, pesticides, including the now banned PCPs and dioxin, and seeds of all kinds. Right now they control the pesticide market with Roundup and Roundup Ready seeds, and they also control a new herbicide that is actually a cousin to Agent Orange. Now recently, on January 17th, 3 days before President-elect Trump's inauguration, the CEOs of these two corporations, Baumann and Grant, slithered in the back door and met privately with Donald Trump. Fox News reported at some point that they were meeting just to encourage Donald Trump to bless the merger between Bayer and Monsanto, and of course to talk about innovation. And why wouldn't Fox News tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Gee whiz, I don't know. Anyway, last week the New York Times, among others, revealed an important story that was covered up by all the political craziness going on, and it is this. The administration is stripping the EPA of its power to protect us. Recent uncovered documents show that Monsanto is making deals to cover up recent evidence that the Roundup pesticide can cause cancer. This sounds suspiciously like what the tobacco companies did before they had to finally admit that cigarettes do cause cancer. Here's a direct quote from the New York Times article. Stunning new documents unsealed by a federal judge suggests that Monsanto worked directly with federal regulators to hide the health risks of and to manipulate the science behind its best-selling herbicide, Roundup. The documents also revealed that Monsanto pressured the EPA officials to not publicly release this information, specifically was on the cancer risk of glyphosate, which is the main ingredient in Roundup. Given the information that Monsanto Corporation heads might be in bed with the EPA, and that would be an embarrassing morning after, leads me to think that perhaps it's time to be proactive. What does that mean? Well, I'm not sure, but I know I've heard it in every keynote speech that I've ever attended, so I'm going with it. Basically, they finish up on this article by saying, quote, these documents suggest an unprecedented level of collusion between the EPA and Monsanto to cover up evidence that Roundup is a likely carcinogen. There is no longer much of a mystery as to whether or not Roundup causes cancer. So today I'm holding off on my planned episode to talk about getting proactive on this whole Monsanto thing. I'll give you the link to the New York Times article in the show notes if you'd like to read the whole thing. Now let's go back a few years to when this controversy began. Back in 2015, the World Health Organization declared glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, to be a probable carcinogen. It started with the field workers who were brushing up against the leaves coated with Roundup and were getting cancer in great numbers. Then the studies moved on to the industrial factory workers and ultimately to the consumers. A class action lawsuit was brought on by victims who developed cancer after being exposed to Roundup. Here's the iffy part. An EPA official tipped off Monsanto to the upcoming ruling in order to help Monsanto's public relations campaign. The EPA promised Monsanto that it would interfere with the review of Roundup by the Department of Health and Human Services. HHS never completed the review of Roundup. Monsanto apparently hired ghostwriters to fabricate research papers on glyphosate and forged the names of academic researchers on the fabricated research papers. Now, this all sounds downright depressing, but I'm here to say that the winds of change may be going in the favor of food safety and, quite frankly, the lives of ourselves and our kids. The Inspector General of the Department of Health and Human Services launched an investigation into the Trump administration. So, could the Inspector General of the EPA be far behind? Time will tell, but people are starting to pay attention. Now, if Bayer and Monsanto merge, and Dow and DuPont merge, which is also likely, then Monsanto, Dow, and Syngenta would own 59% of the Earth's seeds. That also owns 64% of the world's pesticides. We're not talking about the country, we're talking about the world, the place where we can't pack our bags and move from if things go awry. For this reason, I think, there is a growing opposition to these mergers, and these corporations, for the first time, might have a fight on their hands. I feel an analogy coming on, so I'm just going to go with it. This reminds me of a situation in baseball. Let's say one unexpected thing happens. It could be the pitcher giving up a home run to the ninth batter in the lineup, or it could be the baseball going through the legs of Bill Buckner in the sixth game of the 1986 World Series. By the way, there was a seventh game which the Boston Red Sox also blew because they were just so depressed about the whole thing with the ball going through the legs. So the unexpected thing that happens seems to give the other side a psychological advantage, and the side that did the goofy thing has the wind taken out of their sails. So that turns into an actual advantage that has nothing to do with the strength of the players. So I'm hoping that this same thing may happen with Monsanto. I'm also hoping that you may be thinking, what can we do to ensure that our food supply stays safe for ourselves and our children, and local farmers are then allowed to keep their jobs and supply us with healthy local foods? Well, in my opinion, there's a couple of things that I think we can do. First of all, let's boycott everything with Monsanto on the label. That would be Roundup weed killer and other related products made by Monsanto. This week, I'll round up a list of products and seeds and put the list on my website. I'll give you a link to it in next week's episode. Secondly, as much as humanly possible, we should consume organic products. Now, I know the cost is higher, but in my opinion, the cost of getting cancer in dollars, in physical pain, in suffering to ourselves and our family is much higher. Keep in mind that in order for a product to be labeled organic, it has to be free of pesticides on the plant and chemical fertilizers in the soil. And of course, the seeds have to be organic. They have to be non-GMO as well. Because Monsanto only owns GMO Roundup Ready seeds, that will take the wind out of their sails. Third, and this is what I'll be talking about next week, we can use schools, in other words public property, to grow and sell food at low cost. We can teach school children to cook their own organic lunches, to prepare ready-to-eat meals for the community, maybe to make bread or other items to sell, and there could be many more things that can be done on public property. This teaches kids essential cooking skills as well as business skills. That might start to sound like a socialist idea, but if we teach these corporations that they can't do this to us, then hopefully they'll come around and make food that we can safely eat. We all win when we improve the health and well-being of our kids and make cancer once again a rare commodity. That's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.